How's it going, fellow Detroit Red Wings fans? So, our last video, we talked about the Detroit Red Wings lineup, what it could look like come opening day. Now, for a little bit of fun, we're going to take a look at the Grand Rapids lineup this season. So, there is a couple players that could still be in this lineup. I'm going with the Red Wings having the lineup I guessed. So, Hiroshi will be on the NHL roster, but there is a chance he's with the Grand Rapids Griffins come opening night. But to stay consistent, we're going to use the Red Wings lineup as being the Red Wings lineup, so any player with the Red Wings from that video will not be on the roster. So starting off with the forwards, our first line, we have Riley Barber, Joe Veleno at center, and Lucas Raymond on the right wing. Lucas Raymond will finally make his North American debut, and unless he can starstruck the Red Wings, and there's a possibility he can, he's going to be with the Grand Rapids Griffins in the AHL, which is not a bad thing. Unless he can get onto the first or second line in the NHL, it would be better for his development to be playing 20-ish minutes in Grand Rapids against men and getting used to the North American ice. Later in the season, I'm sure we'll see Lucas Raymond. Don't get me wrong, he's going to make his NHL debut this season. But what's best for his development is not playing in a third line or fourth line position, even if it's in the NHL. This is going to be his second season after being drafted. He's got plenty of time to develop. Let him develop so he can become the star he really is. On the second line, we have Chase Pearson at center, Jonathan Berger on the left wing, and Luke Witkowski on the right wing. You may ask yourself, why do I have Berger on the left wing and Riley Barber on the first wing on the left wing? Well, I kind of wanted to give some experience and maybe older players to these young lines. Joe Veleno and Lucas Raymond are both pretty young players. Chase Pearson and Jonathan Berger are both really young players as well. So Luke Witkowski, who was a captain with the Syracuse Crunch in the AHL last season, not to mention he's played in the NHL a good amount of times and he's an enforcer, so he can protect those younger players. Riley Barber put up some pretty good points last season and should be a pretty good role model for Joe Veleno and Lucas Raymond. This will also give them the two lines who can score and put up points. For the third line, we have Kirill Tyutchev, Turner Elson, and Hayden Verbeek. Tyutchev was a 7th round pick from the 2019 NHL draft, which was Yzerman's first draft as general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. And he signed a 2-year contract with the Grand Rapids Griffins last season to play in the 2021-22 season, the upcoming season, and the 2022-23 season. So he should probably be playing on that third line, where he can learn a lot from the veterans there and how to become a more competitive and better player, while also developing his skills so that next year he can be on that first or second line. Elson is a veteran Grand Rapids Griffin, so he should provide some good experience to Kirill Tyutchev and Hayden Verbeek, who is about 23, 24 years old, so he's still a pretty young player and can hopefully show some development. For the fourth line, this is pretty much just AHL veterans. Maybe not the best, but they can get the job done and their bodies that they can put in there and make the team more competitive. So for left wing, I have Tyler Spezia. For center, I could possibly be saying this wrong, but it's Kyle Crisciello. And on the right wing, we have Dominic Shine. So for defense, this one's a little bit more tricky, especially because we have a lot of prospects coming up, and we don't know if they're going to be going out on loan, coming back to the SHL. So first off, I kind of missed him in the Red Wings lineup. It's Jordan Osterley. He is going to be a healthy scratch in the NHL, so he's not necessarily going to be in the AHL. So for the first line, I went with Brian Lashoff on left wing and Ryan Murphy on the right wing. Both are really, really good defensemen. Ryan Murphy, I believe, was defenseman of the year in the AHL, but that will definitely make the team more competitive, which is kind of what they want to do. They want to provide a competitive environment for the young players like Lucas Raymond, Joe Veleno, Chase Pearson, Jonathan Berger, Kirill Tyutchev, Jared McIsaac, Wyatt Newpower, Caden Fulcher, all these guys that are prospects and have a possibility of having a Red Wings future. And having that development and competitive atmosphere that you want to be better. You're going to be in the playoffs. You're going to be going to the championship. You're going to want to compete really, really hard and improve. So that's what that line is going to do. The second line is going to be Jared McIsaac and Dan Runoff. Dan Runoff was signed as a free agent last offseason. Same with Ryan Murphy and Jordan Osterley. He's not necessarily the best, but he gets the job done. And all three of those guys can serve as NHL call-ups. I feel like Dan Runoff wasn't necessarily better than Ryan Murphy or Brian Lashoff, so I paired him up with the left-handed defenseman Jared McIsaac, who will be learning from Ryan Murphy, Brian Lashoff, Dan Runoff, all those guys. On the third line, we have Dylan McElrath and Wyatt Newpower. Wyatt Newpower is a younger defenseman, so we're hoping he can show some development and make his way to at least being a first-line AHLer, or possibly being able to be a top 6 or 7th defenseman on an NHL roster. Dylan McIlrath is an enforcer. He's not necessarily an NHL defenseman, but he is definitely a really good veteran presence to have in an AHL lineup that is trying to be more competitive. So, two things. There's Albert Johansson and Donovan Sabrango. Emil Viro, we already know he's going to go back to Finland. There is a good chance he's going to make his North American debut probably later on in the year. Albert Johansson looks ready and primed to be making his jump to the AHL. As of right now, it looks like he's going to be loaned back over to the SHL and develop over there. Most likely to bring back to the AHL and North American ice if he starts dominating the SHL or his season ends, depending on whichever happens first. And then there's also Donovan Sabrango. He was a 3rd round draft pick from the 2020 NHL draft, and he made his pro debut with the Grand Rapids Griffins last season on a pro tryout contract with the Grand Rapids Griffins. However, due to the fact that he still has junior eligibility, he will be heading back to the OHL. The only reason he was able to play is because the OHL canceled their season, and I'm going to guess the Red Wings thought it was best for his development, and he actually did look pretty good and confident with the Grand Rapids Griffins this last season. So he can show some good development, and then maybe a year from now in the 2022-23 season, he'll make his way to the Grand Rapids Griffins, maybe even surprise people and go to the Red Wings. As for goalies, this one's pretty easy. So I picked starter, backup, and 3rd string. Calvin Pickard's going to be the starter. Backup is going to be Caden Fulcher, unless he can show some really, really good development and take the starting job from Calvin Pickard, which I'm sure the Red Wings are hoping for. Our 3rd string goaltender is going to be Pat Nigel. He's basically going to be in the ECHL. If someone gets hurt, then he can come up and be the backup for the Grand Rapids Griffins. Alright, so that's our guess as the Grand Rapids Griffins lineup. Please comment your lineup down below. Who are you excited to see? I'm really excited to see Lucas Raymond finally make his North American debut. I think it's going to be a really, really good year for him. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. That way we make more content that you like. And lastly, don't be afraid to subscribe. That way you get notified when we upload a video. And until next time, lights out in the red light district.